So when did Portland start to feel different to you guys? What were the first signs that started to show up that made you think maybe we shouldn't stay here?
I would say probably around COVID was when we really saw, the change, kind of like most big cities did.
We know a lot of it, but what was starting to happen in Portland that specifically made you go, oh boy?
Between the, how COVID was handled and BLM, Portland was all over the news, and some of it was, maybe a bit exaggerated, but a lot of it was in your face. So, I drove through downtown Portland, and there were parts where I would have to, detour, go around because the roads were closed. And there was a few protests that, obviously caught media attention, that were like, whoa, okay, maybe we need to stay away from Portland for a while. And before Portland, we used to go down there all the time and not have that same feeling of, watch out.
Yeah.
So
I think COVID definitely switched it. I mean, we grew up in Portland or outside of Portland our whole lives. And after we moved back outside the area, but to Oregon, it was just different. I mean, my parents worked in downtown Portland, my dad for years and years and years. And it definitely, after COVID, felt less safe to jaunt into the city. It felt uneasy. And it felt like the culture of the area was very divisive. And so it didn't feel welcoming or a place where it felt like I wanted to be. Even if nothing ever bad happened to me personally, you could kind of feel the vibe of the area. It just didn't feel right for, I think, both of us.
And then we saw a big change when I believe it was Measure 111, which was decriminalizing drugs. So it wasn't making drugs legal, but it was removing the offense, the felony offense. So it became a $100 fine for drug use. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, EMS was now stretched to their limits because they're running around dealing with, overdoses and having to do narcanning people up. And so it was like, okay, what direction are we headed? And luckily Portland did roll that back very quickly, but it was like, we're testing this stuff out on our children's lives, And it was just like, okay, it's not the type of testing I want to, I felt like that was a pretty obvious, like, probably not the right route, but hey, let's go, Definitely a lot of things that we started seeing that was like, okay, maybe when you throw all this together, that's the real, like, we need to start looking elsewhere.
Was there a specific moment or event that happened that finally flipped the switch for you guys?
I think mentally for me, it was Measure 114, which is Oregon's gun legislation. It was an overhaul on their idea of common sense gun laws. Mm-hmm. And so given that I do avidly appreciate my Second Amendment, that one was a big one. And that was kind of the slap in the face of like, all right, they're telling me I better leave now because it's not long before we're looking like Washington or like California, and it's just not where, I want to be, so.
Yeah, our forefathers kind of warned us about it.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. What were the realities that were happening that made you realize we can't raise our kids here?
For me, along with that, one of the bigger ones was taxes. The amount of money we were spending. We made really good money, and it just felt like it was all going to either property taxes, income taxes. Oregon doesn't have sales tax, which was nice, but we were getting hit on every side of it.
You're getting hit on Portland's metro taxes when we...
Being as far as out as we got a Portland metro tax for the housing crisis. We all just called it the homeless tax.
Yeah.
And it was just like, when are they going to stop bleeding us dry?
And you would drive by still it didn't feel like it was fixing anything.
Yeah.
Well, and 6 years later, it hasn't.
Yeah,
In fact, it seems like it's gotten worse.
You see where they're, parked, and you used to drive by that on a specific spot every time, and they'd usher them out for a while and then they come right back. So it wasn't a long-term solution. So to see so much money go towards it and not see any change is frustrating. And it was bleeding further and further out of the Portland area into surrounding suburban areas. So.
Yeah. And for anyone curious, my name is Trent, and on this channel we talk about what living life in Idaho is really like. If that's something you are interested in, make sure you tap that subscribe button and hit that little notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you are one of those people seriously looking at moving to Idaho, feel free to reach out at the phone number or email address listed below, or you can scan this QR code to schedule a time to talk with me and my team. We can create a custom list of areas here in Idaho that match your wants and needs best. It's what we do all day, every day, and it doesn't cost you a thing. So you have a highly gifted daughter. What challenges were you faced with the Oregon or Portland school district that you weren't going to be able to overcome being there?
As much as we loved her elementary school and the teachers, I felt like for our kids, it was just not going to meet their needs the way I wanted needs met. And we didn't really have the choice around our area for alternate schools that I felt like would.
Yeah.
In the greater area. And there's lots of schools, but it just didn't meet our needs.
Has homeschooling changed your daughter's confidence in any way, or her learning scale?
We are doing kind of like an online charter, and so being able to do that to where we still have the support of a public charter here in Idaho.
Yeah.
They actually have brick and mortar buildings in South Idaho. The teachers have been so supportive where we started the year, and I've always wanted to push her, and like a quarter into it, because we were all a little hesitant. She's new, like how is she gonna do with some online stuff and a lot of independent work?
Yeah.
They moved her up in 2 of the classes to the next rigorous level of math and English, and she's always been ready for that.
Brag, so. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, sorry, but
That's amazing.
She's always been ready for that.
Yeah.
I think I've pushed and pushed, and actually the funny thing is, COVID back when she was online, she was able to join that next grade level group up, and then when you went back to public, you're back in your classroom, and it's so hard to allow really pushing kids individually when you have 30 in a room, imagine that. It's terrible trying to navigate all that. And so I think being able to do this where I'm her learning coach, but we do have, some of the support of these great teachers. She has excelled, and she has become so independent with her learning. I really don't have to do much with her. She knows what she needs to do, and I've just seen growth in all of her subjects.
That's amazing. I can tell that you're a teacher because the way you talk about this, it hits you right in the heart. I didn't have a lot of teachers that were like that, but there were some where it was just like, man, I can really tell they care. And that's probably what brought me through school, because I felt like a lot of them didn't. And man, I was homeschooled up till high school. And so when you get into school and you realize like, oh my gosh, not only do I feel like this is not gonna apply to me as I'm older, and then the teachers don't seem to care at all, how am I possibly supposed to put in effort? Especially when they're like, now go do this at home. I have an Xbox at home. I'm gonna, So you didn't plan on moving to North Idaho. You were heading towards Missoula, Montana. What caught your eye in North Idaho that you said, hey, we need to check this place out?
I got this one. We went, we did a spring break in Missoula, which it was still snowing on us in the fifth wheel.
Right.
And dealing with
trips when you can. Okay?
Take the teacher problems. But we had also planned to hit back through Coeur d'Alene on the way back. And so I think we noticed definitely some differences. Coeur d'Alene obviously feels bigger than Missoula. It felt very small in that Missoula and Montana. It was beautiful there, but it was also beautiful here. And I think we like rural. Obviously, we moved up to where we did, but Montana felt like we were really out in the middle of nowhere, and how would we establish ourselves? Whereas here felt like, you know, we can already see things we like doing. Coeur d'Alene gave us that kind of fun city vibe, and the rural and the lakes and
a good balance between the two.
Yeah, it was really good balance between the two. So it kind of felt like the right choice.
How about for you? What caught your eye?
I mean, the gun laws. Yeah, can't argue with that. Obviously, we were looking more towards western Montana because I love the trees. It's why I loved Oregon. Being an electrician, I always kind of look like, where could I work? Luckily, being an electrician, it's pretty much everywhere. Mm-hmm. But I saw less opportunity in Missoula than I did here, because it is definitely getting bigger, and there's a shortage of electricians everywhere. So, but I saw it a lot here, and so I was like, okay, I know I can provide for my family and, do what my wife wants to do by taking some time off. I know I can do it here. And so that was my primary focus.
What were the first things that you noticed that felt different here than they did in the Portland area?
Well, you guys kind of share it with Missoula, but we were walking through downtown, and I looked at my wife and I was like, does it feel different here? And we're like, it's the lack of homeless. Like, it's, it's very apparent. It's clean. It's very clean, and you can walk through downtown and not feel unsafe. And I don't worry about walking with my kids downtown that they're gonna have to see something that I don't want them to see, or be around something that I feel uncomfortable with. And so to me, it was very apparent, and I enjoyed it. I liked that.
You like clean, safe places?
I know.
What a weirdo. Just kidding. How about for you, Sarah?
I think that is probably kind of what we noticed, but it definitely felt like, I guess I was surprised, never having been up here, and you hear, oh, North Idaho, it's middle of nowhere. Like, that's definitely what you hear. Mm-hmm. And then you get to Coeur d'Alene, and they have this beautiful big library and this park that is just like, you felt like you could go sit on the bench and just let the kids play. And you saw so many other families doing it. And again, we were here it was snowing when we were here the first time, and there were still, kids playing.
Was there a specific moment where you said, yep, this is where we're moving?
When we came up and started looking, and we found some places that I looked at Justin and I'm like, nope. I'm like, that's not it. But once we got to the property we chose, we just sat there for a bit, and it was like, are we ready to do this for our family? And we sat there with our kids, and that was the moment we're like, we're going to buy this property. We're moving here. And again, we didn't know if we were moving there as soon as we are. We did it within a year. We didn't think that was actually going to happen, but that was like the moment we knew for sure that was going to be our next move.
So you just felt it. You just were there, and you just went, this is it.
Yeah. He loved it.
I did.
He was convincing everybody.
I try not to make rash decisions. I say try. So for me, it was definitely, reading up on the gun laws, reading up on, where do you guys go ride? Where's the ATV trails? Where's the hunting? Where's, where do you go put in your boat at? What lakes can you go swim in? I know you can't fish or you can't eat the fish out of Coeur d'Alene Lake.
I mean, you can. You don't want to.
So it was to me, it was, I only wanted to move my family once. I didn't want to, pull them around the whole country trying to find that perfect spot. So I really tried to do my due diligence of, where can I one time move them and roll the dice, but I wanted to make sure that odds were stacked in my favor. So,
how would you describe the culture over in the Portland area right now?
Not my type of culture.
Okay.
I feel like there just lacks a community that I felt like we could be a part of. Even living where we did outside of Portland, I didn't feel like we wanted to go to Portland. I felt like people were very angry and less welcoming, and just not feeling like we really had a spot to fit in and want to stay.
It felt like the world's problems were at your front doorstep. And, you know, some people want to champion that, and more power to them. But my views are the biggest change that I can have is raising my kids the right way. And so I didn't want that necessarily in my face or in their face all the time. So I want them to be able to be raised in a place that they feel safe, comfortable, and, you know, we can worry about, you know, providing them the best possible things that we can.
It's a really good point you made, that it feels like the world's problems were being placed on your doorstep. Jordan Peterson has a great saying where he says, if you want to fix the world, start by cleaning your house. And that's what I notice, is that the people who are trying to implement all of these radical changes for the country and the world, when you ask them about their life, they don't want to talk about it because their life is a bit of a mess. And I just think, how can you know what's right for the world if you don't know what's right for your life? And it kind of sounds like you might have come to the same conclusion of like, I don't think these are my problems, but you did the mature, responsible thing. What can I control? I can control what the next generation looks like right in my home.
Yeah.
And I think that with too many people focused on how to fix the world, how can you possibly focus on your children when you're trying to solve the world's problems? You said that the gun laws in Idaho were a big relief for you. Mm-hmm. What changed inside of you to realize that you can be in a state that actually supports you to keep your family safe and to protect them?
Well, I've always appreciated my right to keep and bear arms. And I think that's always kind of been a foundation of how I think, you know, especially even in Oregon, it was rural and police are 30, 40 minutes away. So it comes down to you to protect your household and make sure that, you know, nobody's getting in. And so when Oregon felt like it was saying, no, you need to rely on the system, you don't need these things, we don't trust you, I had to question, well, what's happening if a government doesn't trust its own citizens? And so I wanted to find a government that said, you know what, we would actually appreciate you taking some accountability in your own safety. And it's like, okay, that's my level.
Feels right.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I feel, you know, that I should be responsible for my family's safety and, you know, our well-being. So I appreciated that about Idaho.
I feel like I need to say something as an Idahoan to you.
Yeah.
You don't need to defend your reason for wanting to have a gun.
Thanks.
Ever. Right? It doesn't matter what anybody says.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they are infringing. And you nailed it. Why doesn't my government trust me with a gun? I'm a law-abiding citizen, never done anything wrong. So why is it a threat to me? But I can right now look at a lot of things my government has done wrong.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have to look back very far with our government, with a group of people who said, just give up your guns and we'll protect you and we'll honor our promise. Yeah. And they didn't. And so I don't need to find out if that's changed. All right. You're in the right state, my friends. All right. Lee, you left a steady job at Intel to now go work a rotation in the oil fields in Alaska. How has that decision affected you? Are you happy with that decision, or do you kind of regret it?
I miss it. I really do. It was, a job that I thought I could retire at, definitely. But my family's needs came utmost the important. I asked myself, well, how do I make it happen? You know, because leaving a job to move your family and then also go try to find a job, I knew it wasn't going to happen, at least not nicely. So moving, going to Alaska to do that was the only way I knew how I could make this transition happen as smoothly as possible.
Has it been worth it?
I believe so. Yeah. It's, you know, it also allowed her to leave work, take time. And so it's been beneficial across the board.
So you guys are living in a fifth wheel right now while your house is getting built.
Yep.
Was that always the plan, or was that what you just decided you had to do to make it work?
I don't know. I mean, I watched a lot of YouTube videos of the full timers. I was like, man, that looks like so much fun.
They don't have 2 kids and 3 animals.
Oh, some of them do.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of editing that goes into those videos.
There's a lot. Yeah. It gets tight. I'm glad I leave for 2 weeks at a time. It's
So he can stand up and not hit his head.
yeah, I get to stretch my legs and have some peace and quiet once in a while.
This is about the emotional side. You're really in tune with your emotions, huh?
Yeah,
Good.
Dialed in.
How has your stress level changed since moving here?
Well, we're building a house right now.
It's a terrible
So-
question.
Is that difficult? No, I'm just
It's a
kidding.
little hard. I think we're stressing over different things. I think in some respects, some of the stress we had in Oregon due to our personal lives has greatly vanished. And I think long term, that's actually going to be the healthiest thing for us. I think we have some stresses. Again, building a house, trying to make new community is hard and stressful. I mean, kids make new friends at school and they're all stressed out. I think adults get that same way. We just don't want to admit it. And so I think we're moving toward the right place. Not to say we don't have any stress. And I have kids. I was told I have kids, so it'll never go away.
No, it doesn't. I think that there's like a difference between the stress of going to the gym versus the stress of worrying about having a heart attack, you know?
Choose your hard.
Yeah, you guys are choosing, like when this current level of stress changes, because you'll find new things to stress about, but like you guys are going to be in a really wonderful place because you're going to have a brand new house, and then you'll have to figure out where to fill that vacuum of where the stress is going to come from.
What can I worry about now?
Yeah, exactly. If a family back in the Portland area is feeling the same pressures that you guys were feeling, what would you say to them?
I guess I would say that it's hard to maybe leave that area if you have a good job. That was some of the stress and why it was so hard for me to commit to this move, is giving up security, or a feeling of financial security or like the known. But if something's really pulling at you, I think it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of pros and cons charts and discussions, but you have to find what feels right. And I think, you know, for some people, Portland's gonna feel right, or cities are gonna feel right because they like the urban setting. But if you're feeling like that area is not right, start to explore where you're going to want to be for the next 30 years. Like what's your plan? Don't wait because it'll go by too fast.
What about you, Lee?
It should not be a knee-jerk reaction. Absolutely. You know, it took us years of discussing, and, you know, we knew we wanted to stay somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, and obviously we had some limitations within that. But, you know, just constantly discussing how we're going to do it, like play by play. What's it going to look like? You know, are we going to live in a fifth wheel? Are we going to rent? Are we going to buy a house that's already done? Like, it just leaping without looking is the worst decision. It's the easiest way to find yourself in a terrible spot. And we arguably could still find ourselves in a terrible spot. But I think we've put enough planning and forethought into, you know, how we're going to make it work to where, you know, it's got to be in the front of your mind, like, how is this going to work? As long as you've given yourself a good foundation to jump off, you know, you can make it work.
So what I hear you guys saying is listen to your gut, but use your brains.
Yes.
Got it.
I can't believe I was the listen to your gut person.
Well, I think, I mean, at the end of the day, like the psychology behind it, right? If you're living in a place that you don't feel safe and it doesn't feel like home anymore, you don't want to ignore that just for a paycheck. Because one day, you know, you'll have enough money and realize, oh, money wasn't actually the thing that I needed. What do you wish you knew earlier?
That our house was going to sell easily and I would have started building sooner.
We're
still in that fifth wheel. We're trying to get it in the shop right now.
So you thought your house was going to take a lot longer?
We were worried. It's, in some houses and in our neighborhood sat and had to drop price. We got offers within
less than 48 hours. Full price offers.
And so
it just kicked it into high gear right away.
And then you still have that time to wait that anyway. So it's like, I think we were so afraid of anything falling through. We didn't want to, because we're building a house, like say, green light it, and then all of a sudden the house fell through and we didn't have it. We didn't take that risk. And in retrospect, we're like, darn, if we would just started, like just giving him the green light a few weeks earlier, we'd be warmer right now. Not going through propane as fast. But at the same time, that's not something we could have known.